Okay, so welcome back to HRM 251. Today, in Chapter 2, we move from what to the why and to the who. We're asking what forces are actually driving this integration and which institutions, which formal bodies are shaping the rules that HR practitioners like you have to work within. Let's start with the drivers.
There are three structural forces that are pushing organizations toward global integration. The first is the liberalization of trade and capital policies. Over the past several decades, international treaties have systematically lowered the friction of moving goods, services, and capital across borders. For an HR practitioner, this matters enormously. It means your organization can deploy capital and build supply networks wherever talent, capability, and regulatory conditions are most favorable. Here in the Philippines, this is exactly the mechanism that allowed our BPO sector to flourish. Trade liberalization opened the door. Our English proficiency and cost competitive, highly trainable workforce walked through it. The second driver is the corporate market and cost seeking mandates. Companies today face intense pressure to achieve economies of scale, to enter untapped consumer markets, and to protect against margin erosion home. This pressure is precisely what pushes multinational corporations to establish regional hubs. And again, this is familiar story for us. For Baguio City and La Trinidad, along with Metro Manila and Cebu, we have become attractive hub locations for exactly this reason. Cost efficiency combined with a skilled English-speaking talent pool. The third driver is the convergence of consumer demands and business standards. As consumer expectations harmonize globally, think about how a customer service, standard, or quality benchmark looks roughly the same whether you are in Manila, Mumbai, or Manchester. Organizations can deploy standardized operational frameworks across markets rather than reinventing processes for every country. Now, globalization doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's shaped and constrained by a supranational bodies and regional economic integrations. First, the World Trade Organization or the WTO. Now, the WTO enforces multilateral trade rule structures. For multinational companies, this creates a predictable, stable environment needed to make long range hiring and capital commitments. No organization wants to build a 10-year talent pipeline in a country where trade rules could shift overnight. Increasingly, WTO aligned trade agreements also embed social and labor clauses, which means corporate operations are now bound to human rights standards, environmental compliance, and minimum wage protections as a condition of market access. Second, the European Union or the EU. The EU represents the deepest form of regional integration in the world, a fully integrated single market with absolute freedom of movement for workers. Now, if you are an HR manager operating in the EU, this is a double-edged sword. On one hand, you get frictionless cross-border recruitment. A German firm can hire a Portuguese engineer with minimal red tape. On the other hand, you must navigate supranational frameworks like the European Works Council directives, collective bargaining conventions, and of course the GDPR, which we'll revisit later in the course. Third, and the most relevant to us regionally, the ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Unlike the EU, ASEAN shapes a highly dynamic but heterogeneous labor landscape. The ASEAN Economic Community facilities mutual recognition arrangements for specific skilled professions like engineers, nurses, or accountants. But significant labor law disparities and immigration barriers still remain between member states. This means HR professionals working across ASEAN, including many of you managing regional teams from here in the Philippines, cannot copy paste a single regional policy. You need hyper-localized compliance strategies country by country. Let's turn to the third and final part of this chapter, the fourth industrial revolution, or the 4IR. This is the fusion of physical, digital, and biological systems, and it is fundamentally restructuring the nature of work itself. There are three core pillars. Artificial intelligence and machine learning now automate complex analytical processes and drive predictive talent analytics. Think of an AI-assisted resume screening or attrition forecasting. Hyperconnectivity and cloud architecture permits seamless synchronization of work across decentralized transnational teams. This is the infrastructure that makes remote and hybrid global teams possible in the first place. And last, the blockchain and distributed systems, which are increasingly used to verify professional credentials and automate international employment contracts through smart contracts. These pillars carry three major strategic implications for IHRM that we need to internalize. First, the borderless virtual gig economy. HR focus is shifting away from traditional long-term expatriations toward managing agile, transient digital nomads who may be working across multiple tax jurisdictions simultaneously. Second, the rapid skills obsolescence. Global HR leaders must now spearhead continuous, large-scale upskilling initiatives because technical skills that were relevant 5 years ago may already be outdated. And third, the algorithm-driven performance and ethics. As organizations lean more heavily on automated tools for surveillance and selection, HR must provide sophisticated oversight to mitigate data bias and ensure alignment with international data privacy laws. For those of you who are working in the BPO sector or in the IT-enabled service sector, which, as you know, is one of Benguet and Baguio's and La Trinidad most important economic engines, in this section, you will feel especially close to home. The very same 4IR forces that create efficiency also create disruption risk for the routine, process-driven roles that make up a large share of our regional employment base. The tension between opportunity and disruption is something you, as future HR leaders, will be expected to actively manage, not simply observe. Let's bring this together. Globalization isn't just something that happens to organizations. It's actively driven by trade liberalization, corporate strategy, and consumer convergence, and it's actively governed by institutions like WTO, EU, and the ASEAN. Layered on top of all of that is the 4IR, which is accelerating and complicating every one of these dynamics simultaneously. For the graduate HR practitioner, especially for those of you who are operating in the Philippines or ASEAN vintage point, this chapter isn't abstract theory. It's the operating environment you are already working within. Whether you're managing a BPO delivery team, a regional HR function, or a cross-border talent pipeline. So that's it for chapter 2, and we will see you on our next lecture.